Recording in progress.
Great, thank you. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the regular board meeting of the Desert Water Agency for November 5th, 2024. Just some housekeeping matters before we proceed. If you're participating remotely, you have the information already on how to join us, shown on the agenda as that was posted last week. And also we'll ask that you mute your microphone until or unless you're ready to speak during public comment, for example. And also those of us that are in the room, if we could mute our electronic devices so we don't disturb during the meeting. I will be calling on directors in the following roll call order: Director Gracia, Director Bloomer, Secretary Treasurer McKenna, Vice President Bowman, and President Ortega. And then all votes will be conducted via roll call. And with that, I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Right, thank you. Ms. Baca, would you take the roll call, please?
Director Gracia,
Present.
Director Bloomer,
Present.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Present.
Vice President Bowman,
Present.
and President Ortega.
Present.
All present.
Thank you. Move to item 4 on the agenda, which is public comments for items that are not on today's agenda. So this would be a time for members of the public to speak to the board for 3 minutes or less about an item that is relevant to the business of the Desert Water Agency, but not on today's agenda. Just a reminder that due to the Brown Act, we as a board are prohibited from acting on items that are not listed on today's agenda. Ms. Baca, have we received any public comment?
No public comments have been received.
Okay, thank you. Item 5 would be, similarly, would be items that are on today's agenda. If there are any members of the public who would like to participate, please either raise your hand virtually or come to the podium. And seeing none, we'll move to item 6, which is our consent calendar. We have quite a few items listed on the consent calendar today. These are considered routine and will be voted on as a group unless, of course, there's a director that would like to pull a particular item for further conversation but with the rest of the board. Do we have any such items that we'd like to pull today?
Yes, I'd like to pull F and G, please.
Okay. Then we will, anything else? Just F and G? All right. So let's start with item F, reporting of backup facility and capacity charges. Is that Director Sines? Thank you.
Would you, thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. Would you like a full report out, or did you have some specific
Actually, I have
questions?
three questions. I'll give them ahead. I wanted to discuss the short collections in years 2000 to 2016. It's history, of course, but I'm curious to know how we short collected all those years and built up that big deficit.
Okay.
That's the first one.
Okay, so for just to reference the short collections in general, so the agency builds out our infrastructure in advance of connections, and so that's our reservoirs, our wells, our booster stations, and everything else that adds capacity to our system. And that doesn't align with the location or timing of the new connections in any given year. So we are advanced building, advanced paying, and then the capacity fees are set at a rate to collect that back. However, we do have a historical deficit and so that is because our capacity fees have not been set historically at a level to collect 100% of that investment. And so back in 2008, the agency did an additional study, and it's in our resolution for water rate setting that capacity fee, where we took a shorter horizon. So looking back at recent history, I believe it was like an 8-year period, they looked at what our historical connections, rate of connections were, and what our projected need was, and what it would take to increase the capacity in the system to be able to cover that future need, and set the capacity fee at that level at that point in time, looking to the future and what the future needs were, rather than to collect a capacity fee enough to cover 100% of the historical deficit. Now, seeing that our capacity fees were not set a level to cover 100% of that increase of capacity needed for new connections, what has covered that deficit is our rates. So the customers using that capacity are paying for it each year. So that's the reason for the deficit is not set to recover 100% of the cost in any given year.
So going forward, would we expect this balance? It won't disappear, will it?
No.
It would just decline. But shouldn't we write it off? Shouldn't we?
It's not a balance on our balance sheet. This is just a historical documentation of what we have spent to increase capacity, to install capacity into our system versus what we have collected. It is not anything that is on our balance sheet that says it's a liability or anything that needs to be repaid. This is just a ledger off to the side.
All right, thanks. That was the first one. The second one is more specific. It's about the recycled water. Will it ever pay? That's the basic question.
The easy answer, no.
Oh.
So the recycled water system, it will never repay the original investment through the capacity fee. The recycle program, it is subsidized by the domestic water rate, and in an effort to conserve our groundwater and protect the groundwater quality. So that is an additional effort that the previous board, as comprised, had made the decision to make that investment into for that protection. Also, the recycled water system has a limited amount of connections. Right now, I believe it's 10 connections, and future expansion is very limited based on the location of the current facilities being prohibitive, as well as the capacity that is available, as our, the influent that we receive to treat, that is a finite amount. And so we do not have the future customer base that would be able to essentially repay that. So again, just as in the potable water system, the water rate has subsidized the capacity.
So we do it in the public interest, the greater good.
Correct. And
Right.
I mean, and also we have, our rates have sustained that. So this, again, is not a liability. It's not sitting there as something that needs to be repaid. It is just an accounting of what we have spent, invested into the capacity of our system versus what we have collected in this particular charge. But everything has been paid for.
And the third question is on the sewer service. We convey water to Coachella Valley for treatment, but we don't treat any of this. Why is the sewer service charge ever in deficit?
So this is not a sewer, this is sewer capacity fee and not the sewer service charge.
Right.
So our rates are set to where we are not in deficit. You are correct in the fact that we do collect the sewage, and we send it to the city of Palm Springs and CVWD for treatment. And that on our utility bill, the sewer service charge includes a component of CVWD and the city of Palm Springs fee, of course, depending on the geographical location of that particular service. So that is the ongoing service cost. Now, this is a ledger of the capacity fees, which again is kind of like the capital infrastructure for that capacity in our system. And again, the sewer capacity fees were not set at a level historically to cover 100% of those costs. So the remainder has been covered by that monthly sewer service charge, just as, so the original build out and the ongoing improvements have been compensated by the monthly service fee rather than that original charge when someone connects to the sewer.
Yeah, my observation is this, that fund has spent $21 million of ratepayer money and collected 3. So the sewer capacity is being subsidized by all the ratepayers for a few. And I wonder if you have any suggestions to get that in a better balance?
I do not see it as a subsidy by all of the ratepayers for a few, because everyone that is connected to the sewer system is using the capital infrastructure that was put in. So the capacity fee was not set at a rate to again cover 100% of the capital. It was set at a level to offset. So decrease what had to go onto the sewer monthly rate, but those who are paying the monthly sewer service charge are using the system. They are using the capacity in the system.
And that's my point. We set that service charge based on what Palm Springs and Coachella Valley pass on to us. You know, that fee, they basically set it, we collect it. But we're never going to recover this $18 million
There are two components to our monthly service fee. There is there's more than two components. How it's broken down in our rate is we have DWA's component and the pass-through component. So we not only charge CVWD or City of Palm Springs fee, we also charge our own, which we are collecting on. So we are covering, our rates are set at a level where they cover 100% of our costs, and we are not in any deficit, and we are not being subsidized from any other fund.
And that's a good point, but it's not the same point. It's as if we had invested $18 million in an enterprise and we're not collecting a return on it. That's another way to look at it. Go.
We put it into the rate.
Yeah, that's my problem. Everybody's paying it instead of just the few.
No, the people using the sewer are paying the sewer rate. Sewer rates aren't on my bill.
And the rates are self-financing, and they're not, you know, nobody's subsidizing the rates. It's this capital expenditure that we made in the past that sunk, basically. It's a sunk cost. It's never coming back, is it?
It
That's my
has been
question.
already paid for by the rate, so it is not
That's
a
the
sunk
problem.
cost.
That's not the solution. Maybe I'm not explaining it well, but if a certain subset of our customers got connected to the sewer and we collected $3 million for doing that and we spent $21 million to make it happen, someone has chipped in $18 million. And it's all the ratepayers, not just the ones that we're collecting. No, am I wrong? Go ahead.
It's only the,
It's only the people using the sewer paying the sewer rate.
Let's stop talking sewer rate, right? This is capacity charge.
But she's saying that the sewer rate goes to pay for the infrastructure, that the capacity, it does.
How does it?
Because we collect it and
If
it goes
that were
towards
true,
it.
this balance would be reducing every year.
We don't reduce the balance every year because it's not on the balance sheet.
Yes, this is just a historical ledger saying that what we have expended to install capital infrastructure versus one type of charge that we have collected. So the purpose of these ledgers, so we have the ability to charge a capacity fee. And we have done so in I'm just going to, even though they're called a little bit different, I'm going to refer them as all the same as a capacity fee for our water, recycled water, and our sewer systems. Now, we have the option to advance collect and then install the infrastructure and have it set aside so that we can then install the infrastructure and have that as our fund and put it into essentially our capital infrastructure fund. If it is not used, we must return it to them within 4 years. However, we are just stating that we have used everything. We are paying ourselves back for their proportionate share for the capacity in the system. I do understand that there is a historical deficit because it has built up over the years, and that is based off of the rates that were set. Now, we are looking forward, and especially in the water side, we have taken a shorter horizon of what the future needs are so that they're only purchasing into the new capacity rather than paying back the old capacity fees that were in deficit. So that's the purpose of this. It does not give the whole picture of us maintaining our solvency or fiscal solvency. So it's just a ledger of how much we've collected in this singular fee, but we have paid the rest of it with the rates, the monthly rates.
You were,
Well, no, I mean, we're talking about capacity fees that relate to different parts of our enterprise.
Correct.
One of them happens to be sewer, one of them has to be domestic water, one of them happens to be recycled water. And each one of those fees outside of the recycled water, as I understand it, those usage or the volumetric fee is helping cover the cost of that initial investment, that previous investment.
Not just the volumetric, it's also the
Okay.
fixed rate
Okay.
too, the fixed monthly service charge. So we collect 30% of our fixed charges and on a fixed charge, and 70% of our revenue requirements on our volumetric rates. So even though our costs are more 50-50 of what's an actual fixed charge and what actually varies with consumption, so it is kind of like the rate as a whole, there is a component in there for our capital infrastructure improvements. So we do fund those with our water rate.
So, and as I'm understanding then, and at least what I'm understanding is that those customers in our sewage enterprise, their monthly rate is going toward paying that initial investment.
It actually goes towards, all of the initial investments have already been paid
Right,
for.
right, but I
So
mean
it goes
covering the
towards
cost of that.
future costs,
The
yes.
future costs,
Mhm.
in the same way that we're doing with our domestic water delivery.
Correct.
So it's not like, as Kristen said, she's not paying, her domestic water bill is not for domestic water usage delivered to her home, is not subsidizing the sewage component, and vice versa.
Correct.
and I accept that as true, but that's not what I'm getting at. And it's a conundrum for me all the time because a business that pays for capital expenditures or out of its daily revenue causes a real confusion in my head. But that's how it's done in the public sector, so I have to live with it. The problem I see is when we build a rate for the sewage conveyance fee, it's built on our overhead and the costs we're passing through from the cities. There's no component in there to recover this expenditure that was made in previous years and was paid for in previous years by all the ratepayers, not just the people who are getting sewer service. There's an inequity in there, and I don't, I'm really looking for an idea of how would you reduce this balance to zero? It's money spent, right? It's historic, but it's not being recovered from anyone, except it's the whole enterprise, the whole business is paying for it.
You would have to charge a huge connection fee to the people that sign up for it.
And if you charge a huge connection fee to future customers, you're asking them to pay back. You're asking them to pay for the cost of the connections of everyone who is currently connected. So in my mind, there is no way for us to be able to historically go back and reduce this amount to zero. The only thing that we can do is to ensure that future connections pay 100% of the cost of the capacity, the future capacity, or for the recent capacity that had been added for them to be able to connect. But that in and of itself is an estimate that we are that we come up with to attempt to collect the amount that's necessary, but they are based off of historical evaluations and projections of future needs. So they do not always align. So we will never hit the nail on the head moving forward.
Yeah, I get that, but the imbalance here is huge. You know, it's 3 billion versus 21 million. So it's disconcerting, you know, to see that the connection fee. Well, look at some of these years. 2008 to 9, collected $50,000 and spent 12 million. So I mean, I know there will be leads and lags, and there will be, you know, infrastructures added in big chunks, and the connection fees are coming in small chunks. But at some point, you know, an inequity this big should be resolved. And I'll leave it with that. You know, I'm not looking for a change of policy here, but I just want to highlight that I find this odd.
Okay. All right, can we move to the next
Yes.
item? G, request authorization for finance director to execute payment processing services agreement with Payment Tech LLC and JP Morgan Chase for utilization with Tyler Payments. And I assume that's you also.
Yes. Before I open it up to just the general question, I'll just give a quick summary. So back in June 2022, the board of directors authorized the staff to execute an agreement with Tyler Technologies for the subscription and implementation services of the agency's new ERP system. Now, we've been heavily into the implementation phase of that system for the past couple years now, and we have successfully implemented our financial module, and we're currently in the final stages of our payroll, human resources management, and our utility billing modules. And future phase will be our enterprise asset management that we will tackle in 2025. This request is not essentially asking, we have already contracted with Tyler for their Tyler Payments module, which is the method of payment, the payment method platform used for utility billing. So we've already contracted for those services, and this is just the what is needed for Chase to. Chase needs an agreement with us to be able to process those because they use that as their payment platform. They integrate with Chase. So this request is authorizing me to sign that agreement with Chase, but we have already contracted for these services. When selecting Tyler Technologies, the decision was made to use a Tyler Payments as a processing platform for credit cards and ACH payments. So that's, think of our auto pay or one-time ACH payments through someone's checking account. Currently, we use a platform called Paymentus for our one-time ACH payments and for our online credit card payments. We use an internally programmed platform, the iSeries, which is what we have been working hard to get away from because of the complications that we have with that system. And that is what processes our auto pay payments. So while choosing Tyler, it was known that we were going to have an increase in these processing costs because currently it doesn't cost us that much for our ACH auto pay because we've already expended the efforts to do that programming. We do have ongoing programming costs for when the system breaks and when we have to do upgrades to it, how we process because of ever-changing regulations for processing those automatic payments in-house. And the agency has made a concerted effort to improve our platforms, our technology platforms, and this folds into that where we're really interested in simplifying things, reducing integrations where possible so that we can have holistic solutions rather than trying to piecemeal them together because in our history, we have found that those connections tend to break and they take a lot of effort to keep working smoothly so we can continue to operate our payments consistently. So understanding that this option would increase the cost to the agency, the benefits definitely outweighed the costs for us when making that original decision in 2022. Such as continued regulatory compliance, simplification of our payment processing infrastructure, and our ongoing maintenance and management needs. So if we did not continue with the Tyler Payments module, which utilizes the Chase platform for that, the credit card and payment processing, we would need to keep our AS400 series in operation to continue to receive and process payments as we do currently, and would require an additional integration into our new system for us to be able to do so. The current annual cost for how we do things currently is approximately $370,000 annually. That is the management cost for the I-Series, what we pay in Paymentus, as well as our Paycom costs, because that's all kind of folded into this Tyler integration. So I don't have all broken down into just processing credit cards, because it is a holistic solution where we're replacing a lot of systems. The new Tyler cost totals about $424,000 overall, for a net increase of $54,300. So I do have a different breakdown in here where it's just specific to the credit card payments and automatic payments, where it does seem like a drastic increase of cost of $153,000, but there's a bigger picture to that when it talks about the ramifications of not moving forward with this agreement. So while the Tyler Technologies platform overall does cost more, it allows the agency to remain current with technology through incremental improvements, provides significantly more capabilities, and shifts the regulatory compliance burden onto other entities with the staff and the expertise that makes them able to maintain that compliance. So I know I did give quite a different presentation than what was included in the staff report, but I just wanted to provide a little bit more color that was not included in the staff report, as it was more limited to just processing payments. But there's definitely a bigger picture here. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you.
It was exactly the bigger picture that I was looking for. So no, I'm reassured by that, because I know that old system is on the point of collapse. So goes back to a point I made some weeks ago. We need to move our technology along at the same pace as the outside world. So I'm congratulating you then, because that's what you're doing. So yeah, I'm satisfied with that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No? All right. So at this point, excuse me.
I'll make a
Yes,
motion to
yes.
approve the consent calendar.
Thank you.
I second that.
Thank you. So I have a first from Director Bloomer and a second from Director Grasha. And may we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Grasha,
Aye.
Director Bloomer,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Aye.
Vice President Bowman,
Aye.
and President Ortega.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Right, item 7 is an action item. We have a request board action on a customer appeal, John Payne, and that looks like it's Mr. Tate.
On a second. Thank you. Thank you, President Ortega and members of the board. Today, I have an action item for a customer appeal for Mr. John Payne. A little bit of background: in 2019, the Board of Directors adopted Resolution 1214 for a policy for discontinuing residential water service for non-payment. The resolution is in accordance with Senate Bill 998, which imposed new and expanded customer protection regarding discontinuation of residential water service for non-payment. The resolution addresses procedures for a customer to appeal or contest a bill. The customer is allowed to request an investigation into the water bill and appeal the results of the investigation to the Board of Directors. The decision of the Board of Directors shall be final. Per the resolution, we have scheduled this action item before the Board of Directors. The appellant, John Payne, is requesting a credit or discount for 3 months, July, August, and September of 2024, for his water bill in the amount of $517.28. $517.28. Mr. Payne is requesting credit due to a swimming pool leak that occurred during the summer while he's away from his property. A summary of actions taken and supporting information. On October 4th, the customers submitted a dispute. See attachment 1 in your handout. On October 7th, a dispute denial was mailed and emailed indicating that the agency generally does not issue credit for leaks. A review of the past 3 years of customer consumption shows that the water consumed for July and August was less than Mr. Payne's historical average. In September, however, the consumption was 29 units over the historical average. We have attached the customers' July, August, and September bills for 2024, which show the previous year's consumption. See attachment 2. Accounting for fixed monthly charges and historical averages, the September bill was approximately $70.76 above the historical average. The $517.28 credit requested by the customer is the total amount for all water consumed, leak and non-leak combined, for July, August, and September, including fixed and variable costs. So that's everything. He wants the whole bill repaid. A summary of the fiscal impacts. If the board of directors decides to deny the appeal, there will be no fiscal impact. If the board of directors decides to grant an appeal, the agency may credit the account up to $70.76. Director Sines has reviewed this report. Staff recommends to the board to deny Mr. Payne's appeal as the water passed through the customer's meter. In addition, crediting the customer's bill would, in essence, transfer his bill to all other agency customers who did not consume the water. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is Mr. Payne available?
President Ortega, he was supposed to participate via Zoom, but I do not see him on the call at all.
Okay, all right. Then I guess we can start with questions for staff. Director Gracia?
I don't have any questions, and I want to thank you guys for all the work you do on these. By the time you get done, it comes down to a $70. It's like, what?
Okay.
So on behalf of the public, I apologize for all the work that our customers, I know they're very high maintenance. I'm one of them, so I know very well how we can be. But other than that, I thank you. And I
All
don't
right.
have any
Director
questions.
Bloomer?
No questions.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna?
I have none.
All right. Vice President Bowman?
None from me.
And none for me. So I'll look for a motion.
I move, adopt staff recommendation to deny the appeal.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right. We have a first from Director Gracia and a second from Director Bloomer. And may we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Gracia,
Aye.
Director Bloomer,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Aye.
Vice President Bowman,
Aye.
and President Ortega.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 8 is a discussion item. It's our state legislative annual report. And I think this is going to be a joint effort this time, right? So Mr. Reeb and Ms. Yort, I don't know who's going to take the lead, but we'll let you decide.
Well, we thumb warred earlier, and good morning, President Ortega and members of the board. Happy Election Day. So what we're going to do is a little bit different than what we've done in the past. We have prepared a PowerPoint presentation, which serves essentially as the executive summary, if you will, of the attached annual report that Bob Reeb, our state advocate, here to my right, put together for us. And also, if there are any questions during the presentation, feel free to ask at that time, or if you'd like, we have a question moment at the end. So the overview of today's presentation, we're going to talk about some of the changes that we've made to our advocacy program and our efforts. We're also going to talk about our engagement levels and then some of the highlights of the legislative cycle. So first off, oh, I'm forgetting to say next slide. I apologize. I will be more mindful. The first one is program changes. So our previous legislative platform was updated to be a 6 to 7 page document. And we are actually going to be bringing that to board in the next couple of meetings because we update it every legislative 2-year cycle and every Congress as well. And so we're really excited to make this a living, breathing document of Desert Water Agency's positions and things that they support or things that we would not support. Additionally, our position letters are now on Desert Water Agency letterhead. We have also created a handout legislative leave behind, which you will see to the left-hand side of your screen, as a general who is Desert Water Agency. So when we do some of our legislative meetings up in Sacramento, this is something that we're able to leave with them. Additionally, on the staff side, we are now meeting bi-monthly with REEB Government Relations to make sure that we are kept abreast of the different things happening as Bob serves as our boots on the ground in Sacramento. And then also we we participate in various association legislative meetings. And so what I mean by that is we are members of the Aqua State Legislative Committee. We are also members of the CSDA Legislative Committee. And we try to attend as guests at other association meetings where we can and where possible. And we also attend, although this is more on the federal side, the NWRA Federal Affairs Committee as well. Next slide. So in terms of engagement levels, and this is something that we will be tracking much more regularly for next year, but the number of position letters, this is just on the state side, that we issued this year were close to 50, or actually 50. This includes association position letters that we signed on to, so like an Aqua or a CSDA letter. This includes Desert Water Agency specific letters on bills, as well as veto requests or requests for governor signature. Additionally, on the regulatory side, staff issued 9 letters. So that's the Making Conservation a California Way of Life rulemaking process, or also engagement through the CVR WMG regional group. And also, we had 12 meetings this year with elected officials and or regulatory offices. And another little fun fact that's not on here, but Bob and his team have made over 200 touch points with legislative offices or regulatory offices throughout the past year on DWA's behalf or things of concern to the water industry as a whole. So if you can see, our engagement numbers are very high, and I look to continue to improve on them every year as we continue to increase our footprint on the state legislative front. Before I go to next slide, as you can see, there are some photos of some lovely individuals to the left side here. One with State Senator Rosalicio Choa Bogue, State Senator Kelly Sayarto down in the bottom left corner, and then Assemblymember Greg Wallace, and that was from our Aqua spring conference visit. Additionally, various interactions. We have a picture of Board President Ortega and Director Bloomer with California Natural Resources Association Secretary Wade Crowfoot. And then we've got Director Sines and myself with Directors Bloomer and Ortega in front of the State Capitol building. And then most recently at the CSDA annual conference, we were included as part of the greeting committee for Assemblymember Wallace, who provided the one of the keynote introductions during the annual conference, which was held in Palm Desert. So some general highlights of the year. Over 2,000 bills were introduced this past year, 1,500 of those in the Assembly and 619 of those in the Senate. When we talk about the state budget, it really focused on really deficit management. The state budget of a couple years ago, where we were in surplus, is not the current landscape for the state of California this year and most likely in future years as well. And so there was a $7.3 billion allocated over multiple years to water investments. However, we did see various cuts to water programs and initiatives throughout the legislative season. One of them, and that we'll talk a little bit further to, for example, Prop 4, which was also known as one of the water bond initiatives that we advocated for this year. There was no state water project funding that was included there. And with that, I'll pass it over to Bob to go into more detail.
Good morning. It's good to be with you here today. The Climate Resilience Bond is on today's ballot, Proposition 4. It's a $10 billion bond. It is wholly the product of the California legislature. Did not have much, if any, input or direct engagement by the Newsom administration, which is quite rare. Typically in the past, the administration and the legislature, along with stakeholders, have worked to create a document or proposal that represents not only the priorities of the legislature, but the priorities of the executive branch as well. This year, we had been working on these as stakeholders with the legislature for approximately 18 months, and the last month of work was behind closed doors with legislative staff and some legislators from both houses. The product was produced on Saturday night at about 10:30. My phone started blowing up. I spent Sunday reading through the online version of the bill. It was heard in the fiscal committees on Monday, in the policy committee soon thereafter, and voted on Wednesday without any changes. So the bond you see on the ballot is a rather significant departure from what we've seen in the past. I will point out on the slide what was included in the final version. If you look at the bottom line, we're looking at about $2.91 billion for what people would call water resources, but that includes $480 million and $660 million, so about half of that for flood risk reduction projects. If you look along the side there in the table with the titles of these various areas, I can tell you that advocacy groups that I was working with were seeking $2.4 billion for dam safety. You can see it ended up with $480 million, which is important. Water Reuse Association of California, which advocates for recycling and desalination projects, was seeking $1.8 billion compared to what was in the bond, about $386 million. The Flood Control Association up in the Central Valley and the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan, which is a document that the Newsom administration produces. Prior to that, the Brown administration, that called for about $5 billion over the next decade in funding. And you'll see this one has $660 million, actually about $550 million for flood risk reduction. State Water Project, the state water contractors asked for $750 million and got zero. The $750 million, so when it comes to the State Water Project, has traditionally been viewed in the legislature as a project that benefits the state water contractors and the population that they serve, and therefore the state general fund, if you will, should not invest in that aside from fish and wildlife and recreation, which were part of the original ballot measure in 1960 that authorized the project. However, things have changed, and one of the important features and benefits of the State Water Project is to provide load relief for the electrical system in California. When the state needs more electricity, the State Water Project can cycle off and relieve that load, and therefore it can get distributed to other persons. And that is really not a feature that benefits only the state water contractors, but the population and business and commerce as a whole. So that was really the base argument for including funding in this bond measure for the state water project. So that came out as zero. What we see in this, so if you total up what the water community was asking for, it was around $11 billion versus the 2.91 billion. So you can kind of get a sense of, well, then what's in the rest of the 10 billion. There's a lot of new programs here. Some of them, for example, port improvements to help support offshore wind development over the next 10 to 20 years. There's some provisions in here for small and disadvantaged farmers for equipment and certified farmers markets and things like that, which traditionally we wouldn't view as priorities for a state general obligation bond. Any questions on the bond before I move to the next slide?
I do, actually. So sort of what's next for the state water contractors when they didn't get money this way? I hear they say about it benefiting customers only, but some of the damage that the system is incurring is a select group of farmers is causing. So how do we recover that?
Yes, so we will, through the state water contractors, to continue to pursue state funding and federal funding for example, the subsidence repairs along the California aqueduct that have been occasioned because of groundwater overdraft in certain portions of the San Joaquin Valley. So that's important. The late Senator Dianne Feinstein and Governor Brown and the legislature had agreed that there would be appropriations to cover that cost based on 1/3 state water contractors, 1/3 state general fund, and 1/3 from congressional appropriations. But we've lost the momentum on that, so we'll have to try and recapture that. DWR has the California Aqueduct Subsidence Program, and they're looking at ways to recover that lost capacity that are kind of an incremental approach. And some of that will feed into the electricity issue, being able to have storage off the aqueduct, next to the aqueduct to move water so it's like a freight train. If you shut off the water, it's still coming along behind you for several hundred miles. And so you've got to have a place to put that, or else it could slop over and exceed the capacity of the canal to hold it, the aqueduct to hold it. They're also looking at renewable energy projects that on the footprint of the project that could assist the pumping capacity and pumping of the project. So things like that, the state water contractors don't view as responsibilities for the state water contractors. So it'll be integrated into discussions with the state general fund budgets each year, much in the same way that the contractors have advocated for various other non-infrastructure related costs of the project. We're not going to give up. Next slide, please. So you'll recall from my visit this spring and last year that water rights legislation was a big effort from the environmental community that believes that the system's over-appropriated and that some diverters are taking advantage of the lack of enforcement authority or the lack of staff at the State Water Resources Control Board to enforce the water rights system. A couple of years ago, the Planning and Conservation League sponsored a document that we shared with you that was written by law professors and attorneys and people in the Attorney General's office that had 11 recommendations to significantly overhaul and amend the water rights administration and enforcement process in California. The 3 bills that are on the screen here were the first 3. They included about 4 of the 11 recommendations. And we, along with AQUA members, California Municipal Utility Association members, business, Cal Chamber, and others really weighed in to try and focus the reform effort on what we believed would improve water rights administration enforcement without throwing it all out and recreating it again. So AB 460, as introduced, would have provided the state board with interim relief orders that would block a diversion for up to 6 months while the state board investigated, and the diverter had to develop a lot of information to support their exercise of their water rights. AB 1337 is introduced, would have authorized the state water board to issue a curtailment order on diversions in any water year type. So not just a drought year, but a wet year, an average year, normal year. The state board would be able to curtail a water right, which really threaten the reliability of water supply and the ability of local agencies, cities and counties to approve housing, water districts to know what water would be available in any given year. And SB 389 would have given the State Water Board authority to initiate investigations, but it lacked due process protections for water users. So the agency engaged along with the other water districts throughout the state to battle these bills. And in the end, two, SB 389 last year and AB 460 this year, were significantly amended. Opposition was removed, and both of those bills ultimately were signed into law by Governor Newsom. We didn't reach agreement on AB 1337, so that bill died in the Senate Natural Resources and Water Committee. I think the key piece here to note is that there's still a number of recommendations that have not been brought before the legislature from that Planning Conservation League sponsored report. So we believe we'll expect more legislation the next session in this area. Any questions on that one before I move on?
Yeah, just sort of a follow-up to the point you just made. Are there, of those 11 recommendations, are there some that you feel that our agency or Aqua or other water agencies could support?
Well, my hope is that there would be the potential for compromise to enhance the state board's ability to go after bad actors. Most of the diverters now are, like the larger diverters, the State Water Project, for example. It's very open and transparent, and it's easily monitored and identified. Where we lose some of that control is with riparian diverters and small appropriators who are between, say, 10 and 1,000 acre feet. The State Water Resources Control Board doesn't have the staff to ensure that. And the stream gauge system that we had in past history has been fallen into disrepair or abandoned. So no one really knows where in the system the diversions are occurring. And so what we're encouraging is, number one, and it's already underway, is for the state board to digitize the water rights records. And they are literally in cardboard boxes in a warehouse on shelves going back to the late 1800s. So there's just no way for the state board to know who's diverting and where. We're also, so that's underway. It's a 3-year project. I think we're entering the 3rd year of that. We're also been advocating for increased state funding for stream gauges. You'll see some of that in this bond, but the legislature and the governor also appropriated, I think, between $6 and $10 million for that. And we're looking at trying to get some real-time reporting on stream systems so that the state board will know from point A to point B if the water that's supposed to be there is actually getting down to point B or not, so that they can better target their enforcement actions. So so that's what we've been working on to try and get the state board, not necessarily new authority, but the tools and the modern approach to being able to tell when people are not diverting according to their terms and conditions of their permit. I don't recall off the top of my head the other recommendations, but I'll be happy to look at them and get back to you on what I think there's some opportunities there.
Thank you. Any other questions?
A comment, really. Water rights is like a hornet's nest, you know. But at the same time, there's huge inequities in what happens to the Colorado River water when it comes off the river. You know, a very small number of people control a very large quantity of water, and they don't do it well, I think. So I would look for a really nuanced approach to water rights. You know, trying not to destroy the whole thing, but it needs tweaking, and you need to finesse very carefully some changes to that system before we all face a disaster.
Yeah, so the law of the river is federal. We wouldn't deal with that in Sacramento, but I think the water community's approach is to provide incentives for conservation, to provide greater incentives and for market transfers without destroying the underlying water right priority system, because that's when you start getting people fighting. But if there's ways to move water in 1 year over time, like the quantification settlement agreement between IID and San Diego, I think there's where we see the water community trying to move toward.
Okay, anything else? All right, we can go.
Next slide,
Yeah.
please. So development-related fees, as you know, California is struggling to provide affordable housing to its population across the state, up and down, side to side. It's a real challenge. The median price of a house in California, according to the Department of Finance fiscal outlook that was released last month, $828,000. So it's a real challenge. Unfortunately, in my opinion, the legislature is looking at some of the tiny little rough edges that don't really address the affordability challenges. And what we saw this session were these three bills and many, many others that tried to change not only the authority to impose, but the authority to collect development-related fees. And so they were targeting water agencies, wastewater agencies, cities and counties, cities that have park impact fees, road fees, school impact fees. Yeah, fees are high. But in California, it's not to point fingers, but when you have Proposition 13 that puts a cap on the growth of property tax, the local agencies in the state moved over to collect the revenue through fees. So these three bills, Desert Water Agency initially opposed all three, opposed unless amended. And they were AB 1820 and SB 1210 were amended to remove the concerning provisions, allow the agency to remove its opposition. SB 937 is an interesting one. It in a sense creates conflicting conditions for how and when utilities can collect connection and capacity charges. This one was signed into law. I wasn't as worried about this one because when I was the state legislative director with the Association of California Water Agencies in a prior lifetime, the California Building Industry Association sponsored a bill that really would have negatively affected the authority of water and sewer agencies to charge collection fees and capacity charges. And what they were really looking for was accountability, reporting, being open and transparent to what happened with the money they paid and what it was used for, to make sure that if you charge them for capacity, that the capacity was actually constructed with their money. So we were able to clarify the authority for water and sewer agencies to impose connection fees and capacity charges, and I inserted, recognizing even at that time that there's conflict potential between Chapter 5, which this bill affects, and Chapter 7, which is where our connection fees and capacity charges are imposed under. And so I inserted language in Chapter 7 that said, fees and charges subject to that section are not subject to the provisions of Chapter 5, which SB 937 amended. So you know, my opinion is that 937 doesn't change anything with respect to the authority of water and wastewater agencies to impose capacity charges and connection fees. And, you know, so we'll keep an eye and see what happens with that. There may be a subsequent legislative attempt to eliminate that subdivision H in section 66,013 of the government code. If they try to do that, we'd not be happy. So that would be something that we would bring back to you to oppose. Okay, next slide. Prop 218. These three bills were all brought by Association of California Water Agencies, California Municipal Utilities Association, and an Aqua member agency, Irvine Ranch Water District for AB 1827, I believe. And they really are in response to increasing litigation throughout the state from law firms that are looking to create a niche by challenging Prop 218 issues and securing refunds because of perhaps either some technical or substantive errors in the development of the cost assessments and the determination by the local agency governing board to determine what rates and charges will be. We started to see a couple of appellate cases that granted refunds. Refunds are not really something that local agencies are geared to do because you don't make a profit, you don't have shareholders to get funding from. So these bills were designed to require an interested party to bring an objection or a concern to the local agency before the rates and charges were approved. So to give the agency a chance to assess whether the complaint had validity or not, and to make changes before you got to the hearing where you were approving the rate and charge. And then the SB 1072 clarifies that rather than a refund, the rate will be adjusted going forward to, in a sense, credit the overcharges by lowering the rates and charges across the board. So all three of these bills made it through the process and were signed into law with Desert Water Agency support. Next slide.
Great. So the next couple of slides have to do with the Low-Income Water Rate Assistance Program, so SB 1255 from Senator DeRosso. So in the first part of the legislative session, you know, we were kind of, I guess, all following this bill, but it wasn't of great concern to us. However, it was amended late in the session after the House of Origin deadline. So when it was in the Assembly, so it's already passed its first House, it was amended to include these radical provisions for a low-income water rate assistance program. And so this was to, I guess, the frustration of many water agencies and water associations because these amendments also did not go through the original House's scrutinizing process, the Senate Policy Committees and the Senate Appropriations Committee as well. So we had an oppose unless amended position. We submitted numerous letters. We were part of Aqua's working group as well for this bill. So essentially, SB 1255 would have created a state-mandated low-income water rate assistance program. And there were many concerning provisions with SB 1255. Some of them include the automatic enrollment of eligible ratepayers to receive assistance. And this would essentially give everyone who qualifies for the program a 20% bill credit, since 20% of their water charges. Other concerning areas include the funding for the program. So in order to fund this program, it's not a state, it would not have been, rather, a state-funded program. Everyone who did not qualify for the program would receive an automatic enrollment into funding this program. So all of our customers who would not be eligible, for example, would receive a little surcharge on their bill.
And you could choose to opt out of the program if you didn't want to participate. And so there were a lot of concerns with that. Aqua was very concerned that really the burden lies on the customer to make sure that they are removing themselves from the program versus choosing to opt in to participate in funding the program. So next slide. SB 1255 also did take into account existing rate assistance programs if it met certain criteria. That criteria included if it automatically enrolled eligible customers or had a very high threshold for the number of qualifying customers. And it also would need to provide at minimum a 20% bill credit. And so our program would not qualify due to the current amount of customer participation and also the 20% threshold is like very close. We with Director Sines and the finance department, we crunched a lot of numbers to see if we would be able to comply with our existing Help to Others program, and unfortunately we would not. And so if SB 1255 had moved forward, we then would have to comply with this state mandated program. Subsequently, also the Department of Finance issued an opposition letter to the bill for the Appropriations Committee. And ultimately, SB 1255 did die in the Appropriations Committee. And so we were very happy to see that. I will say, however, as also part of our legislative and regulatory policy platform, we are supportive, of course, of a low-income water rate assistance program if it is sustainably funded and also funded through state programs versus putting the burden on our customers. Throughout the back and forth process and also through the many committee hearings where Senator Durasso answered many questions from the various committees, the Prop 218 issue related to SB 1255 was brought up. And her response was, because this is a state mandated program, it would not impact Prop 218. And so nonetheless, we are certain some sort of water rate assistance program will make its way through the legislature within the coming year or within the coming cycle. And it's something that, you know, politics is at times a game, and this one was kind of caught us all by surprise in the way that it was amended past the House of Origin deadline. And are there any questions on this particular bill? Okay, great.
Next slide, please. I'll move quickly through these next two. Groundwater extraction. So the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act was enacted in 2014. We're 10 years into it, and the legislature is still tinkering with the provisions of the act, much to the consternation of groundwater sustainability agencies throughout the state. And so this was a bill that we had looked at before in prior sessions where Assemblymember Bennett has been attempting to reform, if you will, well permitting in California. Typically, permitting wells is more of a ministerial than a discretionary part of county and city land use authority, police powers, if you will. Yeah, this bill would have tried to bring the GSAs and the permitting agencies more closely working together, but in doing so would have required a significant amount of back and forth information gathering that could potentially increase litigation risk if a well was denied or if a well was approved based on the information they were seeking. But it also had some very strict prohibitions about location of wells that were really a one-size-fits-all. If it was within a quarter mile of a domestic well, if it was an area subject to subsidence, and another measurement, if you So Desert Water Agency had an opposed unless amended position. As with prior bills, we were looking to have the bill only apply to basins subject to critical overdraft, which would exclude the medium priority basins that your agency oversees and have been managing really quite successfully for over 20 years. We were not successful in getting that amendment, but our opposition, along with a lot of other work by folks, blocked this bill in the Senate Natural Resources and Water Committee. It was opposed by committee members on both sides of the aisle. And the bottom line was, it's really we're at a critical juncture in Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, where the groundwater sustainability agencies are starting to implement their plans, fund their plans, and to throw this additional work on top of that workload is argued to be unnecessary. And I don't know if we're going to see this bill or something like it back again. This one was sponsored by the Department of Water Resources. The other ones were not. So that created a bit of a wrinkle. I participated as part of a small working group of opposition and several meetings with the Department of Water Resources staff and later with the author staff. So it remains to be seen what will happen. But I think as the GSAs move forward with plan implementation, as the state board determines which of the basins that need to be in probationary status, most of them are in the San Joaquin Valley, that I'm hoping this issue kind of goes away. We did see a real spike during the drought of more groundwater wells being drilled in these agricultural areas. Hopefully we'll get back to more normal water year types, and we're seeing that that's falling off. So next slide, please. These are just two other bills of interest. I think the SB 366. So the California Water Plan, back when the first plan, Bulletin 3 in 1957, had projects identified, sites for dams and reservoirs, conveyance projects identified within regions. And we've, over the decades, we've moved away from that type of a plan to a more narrative snapshot of where California is in terms of agriculture, environmental water needs, M&I needs, and things like that, how the water is being used, and issues identified, but it doesn't really plan to solve any problems or challenges. This bill sought to rewrite the provisions of the water code about the California Water Plan to require specific water supply goals and require the Department of Water Resources to identify the means to achieve those goals. And it could be conservation, it could be desalination, it could be brackish water desalination in some areas, it could be new dams and reservoirs. It didn't tell the department what specifically to recommend, but it directed the department to come up with some options to dealing with that. We felt, and others that supported the bill, that this was important to get the state back in the arena of planning water supply projects and hopefully funding those, at least on a cost-sharing basis. Unfortunately, Governor vetoed the bill. He was concerned about the costs of producing a plan like that, and that it would have upward pressure on the state general fund, either through general fund appropriations or future general obligation bonds. He pointed back to his California water supply strategy, which is a strategy without a plan. So we're kind of back to where we started. Don't know what the future holds for this. I know there's a lot of interest in pursuing it again. It will be difficult to do so in the current fiscal environment, and with Governor Newsom typically doesn't turn around and sign legislation that he previously vetoed. So this might kind of have to wait until the next administration comes in 2027. And then SB 1034 by Senator Sayardo just gives local agencies some more time to do a public record request during states of emergency. It was a good bill, sailed through the legislature and was signed by the governor. Next slide is questions.
Thank you. Thank you both. Do we have any questions, Director Gracia?
Is that that's the entire report? I noticed you were very diplomatic in your discussions toward the end of the report on the subject of the elections today. We're about to have a new assembly member, and I would like to encourage our board and staff to make sure we're in the front line of inviting whoever the victor is in the assembly race to open house or some kind of an event to formally recognize them. And I know both of them. It'll be interesting to see who's successful. I think I know who it'll be, but we'll have to wait and see. But it would be good to, whoever it is, to get them in here and say hi.
Okay. Director Bloomer
No questions. Thank you very much for the report.
and Secretary Treasurer McKenna.
Yeah, I'm echoing that. This is a terrific piece of work. I don't know how you do what you do. When I read something coming out of Sacramento, I just want to throw my hands up in horror, at some of the suggestions that appear. So, a lot of blocking is required. I'm hopeful they'll do something on affordability of water. We have a lot of low-income customers, and we have a lot of high-income customers, but we just don't seem to be able to get over the finish line with something, So I'm hoping to see next year's report saying we got there.
Yeah, the question is where it's not so much the program, although we had issues with this bill, but it's the funding source, and it's not. Although the legislature says it's a priority, they don't provide the funding out of the general fund, so that they've got to work on that. Some of us are also continuing to push back on the cost drivers of those rates that make them unaffordable. And that includes permitting requirements, monitoring and sampling requirements. Electricity is a big part of the cost of that water rate, and moving to renewables and things have really driven the cost of electricity in California through the roof. So there's a lot of cost inputs that we would like them to look at. It's like they woke up all of a sudden one morning and said, oh my gosh, people can't afford water rates, and they've forgotten the 20 years of legislation and regulatory decisions that have driven those costs way above the inflationary numbers. So yes, affordability and water income assistance is important, but we're also trying to focus them on trying to control those cost drivers as well. I don't know how successful we'll be, but I think we need to look at both sides of that equation.
I'll just a footnote. I was on a French and German television program, and I told the reporters that in California, access to safe, clean drinking water is a human right. We declared it a human right. But we have nearly 1 million people who don't have it. And they go, in California? Yeah, that's how it is. If we were Zimbabwe, it might be explicable. But it's inexplicable to, some of the lands here, and says, well, why is it like this? Bizarre, but thanks.
Vice President Bowman.
No questions, but thank you for your watchdog eyes over the district and what's happening. Thank you.
And I'll just follow up on a couple of comments that were made earlier. As far as having electeds come and see what we do, I think staff knows that that's a big deal for me and has been for quite a while. So I wouldn't just stop at a new assembly member. I would also talk about our new state senator and other electeds that even locally here within the city limits of Palm Springs, Cathedral City, Desert Hot Springs, to encourage them to come and also see what we do. And as for, excuse me, water affordability, again, that's something that also is very important to me. And it's frustrating to just sort of echo what Secretary Treasurer McKenna has stated. It's frustrating to see, a state that's this wealthy and not being able to provide that safe drinking water to approximately 1 million people or more, and yet at the same time understanding that having the lack of funding from the state to help us do that is concerning as well. So, but I look forward to seeing more attempts at this, some way that we could make those things come together. And those are my comments, and we can now move to our Secretary Treasurer's report. And thank you also for your presentation.
This is the financial highlights for September 2024. Operating fund received $4.6 million in water sales revenue, $125,000 in recycled water sales revenue, and $37,000 in construction deposits. We also including $100,000 in miscellaneous receipts for Conservation Incentive Program participation from the Sentinel Energy Center, LLC, which is the Centennial Power Plant near Desert Hot Springs. Paid out $1 million in accounts payable. Year to date, water sales are 2% over budget, revenues 4% over budget, and expenses 21% under budget. There were 23,603 active potable water accounts, an increase of 9. Operating fund continued. We disconnected 33 accounts against an average of 23 per month for the last year. In the general fund, we received $14,000 in replenishment assessments from private pumpers, $239,000 in reimbursements from Coachella Valley Water District, and $69,000 in power sales from Southern California Edison for the Whitewater Hydro. We paid $2.3 million to state water project charges for a total year-to-date of $7.7 million. Wastewater fund, no payments received, and $24,000 in accounts payable. We didn't pay Edison this month. Presumably we'll get 2 bills next month. That's it for me.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Secretary Treasurer McKenna? No? All right, we'll move to item 10, which is our General Manager's report.
Thank you, President Ortega, members of the board. So on the first item here, just want to highlight the tour that occurred on October 23rd. Fantastic tour. I know several board members attended. It was a great time to do a tour of these facilities. As far as Snow Creek, the weather was beautiful. The Whitewater Hydro was operational, and Mission Creek replenishment facilities, all the ponds except for the last 2 on each side were full. So all the guests got to see everything working, and tons of water. And we had a lot of positive feedback, and staff worked very diligently to put this together. Did a great job. There were over 100 participants, and you can see some great photos of the groups here enjoying Snow Creek and Whitewater Hydro and the ponds. So, and the next item. So the agency, along with CBWD, we hosted Fayaz Mohammed. He's with the Department of Water Resources and works in the financial assistant branch, managing the Prop 1 grant. And Mr. Mohammed visited the Valley to evaluate how state grants are being spent. And he did request to view the Palm Springs Airport demonstration garden. And that did allow our staff to highlight the success of grass removal programs. And staff also discussed potential grass removal at the airport and other locations throughout our service area. And then later in the day, CBWD staff showed Mr. Mohammed other projects in their service area, including the Avenue 66 project. Next item is regarding our lead and copper rule revisions work that the agency's been working on. If you recall, the lead and copper rule revision required the agency to do an inventory of service lines on our side of the meter, and then it required the agency to perform an evaluation of the pipe on the customer side of the meters. And we worked through that plan. We submitted a plan back in August of 2023 on how we would approach that, which was approved by the state. We inspected over 1,200 services and identified customer service line materials at those locations. And we were able to submit our plan as scheduled in October of 2024. There was no lead services found in our distribution system on our side or the customer side. The results will be posted on our website utilizing a GIS created map, which will allow customers review. They can go to their property and review the results. So that's a great way for us to utilize the GIS system. Just a reminder that the office will be closed on Monday, November 11th for Veterans Day. And our system leaks, 30 leaks. I can see that we have several of the streets are within our pipeline replacement program. Barista Road has been awarded, and construction should begin on that street here within the next month or so. Sunny Dunes and Desert Way and Stevens Road is part of our 2025 replacement program. And then Camino Real is part of our summer 2026 replacement pipeline program. Vista Chino is currently working on the design for that. Very challenging street as far as all the utilities that main must go around. So, but we are working on that design, and hopefully here we'll have it designed and out to bid within the next, hopefully, 3 or 4 months, if not sooner. General managers meetings and activities. I just wanted to highlight there October 16th through the 18th. I, along with Director Sines, we went up to Sacramento, attended several meetings with the state water contractors and DC Finance Authority Board meeting, and also we drove out to Maxwell and attended the Sites Reservoir and Authority Board meeting. And it's great to see all the people. I haven't been up to Sacramento in several years, actually, and showed Director Sines around and introduced her to several people. So I think that was a very successful trip, and we'll probably be heading back up there sometime soon. We did have our tribal mediation in-person meeting on the October 21st. Our executive committee meeting was on the Halloween on the 31st, and on the 4th, we did have our first staff strategic planning meeting. So that is moving along, and hope to see where that leads to. So, and with that, be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Director Gracia?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Director Bloomer?
No questions, thanks.
I have one. I'm not used to seeing. I'm used to seeing online pipe leaking on these reports, but we had a lined one that leaked. Was something special happen there? Alejo Road.
Yeah, that I believe. Let me get back to where that was, which street that was. on Alejo Road. And I believe that was at a service, at a coupling on the service. So once in a while, those couplings, you put a saddle on the pipe, and then you put the adapter there, and sometimes those threaded couplings will leak, and believe that caused that leak there, if I remember correctly from the notes I was given there. So
Thanks. Endless curiosity on my part.
yeah, it is unusual to see that.
And Vice President Bowman?
No questions for me.
Okay. I do have, could we go back to your meeting notes? Or list of meetings, I guess. So on the 22nd, there was the CMIS Land Use Agreement meeting. Where are we with that?
Yeah, they're still working through the language of the agreement between the attorneys of DWR and Ascena Golf Course. It comes down to being the liability of the golf course is concerned about having a DWR employee enter onto the golf course, and if they are struck by a golf ball while they're out there, they want specific language that would protect them from any type of suit. And so DWR they just can't seem to come to language that the attorneys can agree to. But we did have a breakthrough at this meeting, and we are looking at where the agreement will cover the DWR employee, allowing them to go onto the course during hours when the golfers are not on the course at that particular time, especially in the morning. Usually you'll start on hole 1 and work your way through. This is, I think, on the 13th hole, so there's at least an hour or more where there will be no golfers in that area. Or in the summertime, of course, golfers are usually off the course by 3 in the afternoon. So we're working through language that hopefully they'll agree to that will cover protection for the golf course.
And this employee would be like for maintenance? That's what they would be there for?
Correct. It would be maintenance of the station, and we did advise them that it might be 3-4 times a year that they would be out there. So I think that also gave them a little bit of ease their concerns, the golf course's concerns.
Thank you. All right, item 11, director's reports on meetings and events attended on behalf of the agency. We'll start with Director Gracia.
I had kind of busy couple of weeks. On the 17th, I attended via Zoom the State Water Contractors Board meeting and the Delta Conveyance Authority Board of Directors meeting. On the 22nd, Tuesday, was the Coachella Valley Water District meeting. They had an interesting item on their agenda in regard to legislative action, approving a liability protection act that would protect those water agencies affected by their refusal to act to protect the public. They're asking that the agencies be protected from liability for not acting, which is an interesting way of trying to get around actually fixing the water. On the 22nd, I attended another meeting. On the 22nd was the Aqua implementing, making conservation a way of life. It was fascinating. I'm looking forward to sharing some of this with our conservation committee meeting. And then on the 23rd was the fall tour, and I want to say that extraordinary work that you guys did. I was on the afternoon tour, and the meshing of the agency employees with the community, it's excellent to see how well this agency reflects the community's desires for public agency work as a water district. The respect in both directions is top notch, and the level of professionalism. I just almost never see anything like it. Really, it's just amazing to see. On the 24th, Thursday, the Riverside County State of the County, I attended with Director Bloomer, and was very enlightening to hear the Board of Supervisors in their way they presented each one of their districts, and I think that we'll leave that alone there. On the 28th, the Coachella Chamber of Commerce had their lunch club meeting here in Palm Springs. I attended that, and not compensatable, but I thought it was worth mentioning. And then, well, several of these are not, but anyway, on Wednesday the 30th, the Aqua California Water Wastewater Cybersecurity tabletop exercise with the Environmental Protection Agency's cybersecurity analyst. And it was nice to see that at that level, our own, knowing what I've heard, learned from our own employees is on the same level of what they're doing. And I thought that was very helpful to know. So congratulations on that. And then on the 30th, the Palm Springs Annual State of the City Awards, and had very engaging conversation with the Kathy Wermack, Chairman of the Planning Commission, and we spoke about water recycling, and she's very engaged, wants to know when her pipeline's coming, and I thank you guys for letting me know, educating me on that subject well enough that I think I carried myself well, and told her that regretfully she was not going to be getting any water recycling anytime soon, but she understood why, and I'm glad to know to have known how to answer that question. So I think that went well, and I appreciate all the work you guys do. And we only get to come by here every 2 weeks to tell you that, but excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Bloomer.
Okay, October 21st, there was a tribal mediation meeting. October 22nd, I also was on the Aqua webinar for Making Conservation a California Way of Life. Very enlightening on all of the things that need to be done and how quickly they need to be done. And then October 23rd, I was also on the fall tour and the morning tour. It was a really awesome tour, and I know multiple community members that I talked to were like, how many times are we allowed to go on these tours? So, and a lot of interest to sign up for the spring tour. And it was actually a little chilly at Snow Creek. Might have needed a sweater. It warmed up quickly, though. Let's see. 1024 was at the State of the County, and like Director Grosh just said, they had a very entertaining way of presenting their productions, and I'm sure the videos are somewhere online if you'd like to check them out. They did highlight numerous times the work that water agencies are doing throughout the county and different projects in the different divisions. So that was good. And then on October 30th, I was at the State of the City for Palm Springs, and I got to co-MC with Nona Watson, who's the CEO of the chamber, and I'm the current president of the Chamber of Commerce. So we got to do that, and happy to see a few friendly faces there as well from the agency. So, and that's it.
Right, thank you. Secretary Treasurer McKenna?
I just attended one meeting, which was a board meeting from Mission Springs Water District on the 21st. Director Duff acknowledged your President Ortega's comments on the director's role, public statements made by directors. So I think they appreciate that you did that. Director Duff also commented they have a significant number of disconnected customers not being reconnected, nearly 100. So there's some sort of affordability issue, up there. More on that later. She also noted our adoption of the 2020 general plan was kind of late and said, I hope they get their act together. Me too. We will. Vice President Griffith commented favorably on our aquifer recharge activity at Mission Creek and said he would be keeping an eye on that. And I think that's a good thing. They paid Southern California Edison $208,000 in September. And that's it for me.
All right, thank you. Vice President Bowman?
I too attended the tribal mediation on 10/21. On 10/31, we had our executive committee meeting here. And on 11/1, we, President Ortega and myself, met with MSWD's executive committee, President Ivan Sewell and Robert Griffith. I think this is our third meeting, bridging the two districts together, talking about issues, big one being conservation. And then, non-compensable for me, on the second, I was asked to speak at the Desert Hot Springs Historical Society meeting on the importance of water for Desert Hot Springs. So I entitled the little speech, a little presentation, Desert Hot Springs, a city founded on water. And I reached out to MSWD to see if any of their directors would be interested in joining me. And Director Duff did accept that. And we had about a 45-minute presentation, and it's currently on the Desert Hot Springs Historical Society YouTube channel if you want to get some sleeping aid in the evening if you need to shut your eyes. And we had a good attendance by a lot of water people, and it was a delightful time. And lastly, last night I attended the legislative committee dinner, and appreciate you coming down and briefing us at the dinner some of the things and all the work that you're doing for us. Thank you.
Thank you. So yes, we haven't had a board meeting for 3 weeks, so it's kind of busy time. Starting with the 22nd, there was the Aqua Region 9 board meeting in Temecula, where much of the time was actually spent talking about the program that Region 9 will be doing for Aqua in December, which will focus on agriculture. Followed by the Aqua webinar that has been mentioned a couple times already about implementing, making conservation a California way of life. It's daunting, quite daunting, but one of the things I did appreciate about that particular webinar were the comments or the various presenters from different organizations that are all working to help water agencies in California get the data, analyze the data, and be able to meet some of these deadlines that are coming down the road. Those were resources that I was only vaguely aware of, and it was a little bit more reassuring, I think, at that point to know that they're out there and available to water agencies like ours. On 10/23 was the fall tour, which has been mentioned a couple times already. Again, I think this is a great opportunity for the public to know better about what we do. If anyone ever gives me the opportunity, I insist that they have to take the tour. And so there were quite a few familiar faces of people who took me up on that offer. And 201, they commented about how well it was done. And back to Director Grosh's comment earlier, the level of professionalism that they witnessed during those various stops by folks here at the Desert Water Agency. So thank you for, again, a great time. 10:28 was cybersecurity training. 10:30 was the Palm Springs State of the City, which again has been mentioned a few times. Having now had the opportunity to go to several State of the City meetings for Desert Hot Springs and Cathedral City, this one was a little different. Instead, had a lot of entertainment at the beginning and a lot of video. It could have been edited a little bit more, but it was very informative and of course very comfortable at the Annenberg Theater as its location. 10:31 Executive Committee, as Vice President Bowman has already mentioned. 11:1 was the meeting with the Executive Committee of the Mission Springs Water District. The two things that we seem to be in full agreement on in terms of proceeding. One is something that has already been sort of discussed between the respective general managers, and that is to have a regular staff updates made to both boards. So that would be, for example, a Desert Water Agency staff doing an update to the Mission Springs Water District Board on a particular topic, and vice versa. We seem to think that all seem to agree that that was a good thing to maybe do that every 6 months or so. And then also, as Vice President Bowman mentioned, both of these water agencies have a really heavy lift ahead of them as it relates to making conservation a California way of life, and how these two agencies might be able to work better together in terms of making or trying to achieve those goals and targets. 11:2, just past Saturday, as Vice President Bowman has mentioned, a non-compensable event put on by the Desert Hot Springs Historical Society, which was a lot of fun. And then yesterday evening, the legislative ad hoc commit meeting prior to where we got to meet again with Mr. Reeb and talk about what we've talked about today. So all good things. Very long day, or very long few weeks. And with that, we can now move to item 12, which is our director's comments and requests. And we'll start with Director Gracia again.
Thank you. A couple of times it's come up regarding the letter that was sent to this board from Mission Springs Water District about my insistence on keeping their feet to the fire on the subject of safe water and other things. Recently, there was a development on that subject that caused the media to become involved. And I want you to know that while we're trying to get along, it's hard to get along with agencies that aren't as transparent on subjects as they would like the public to think they are. And while they celebrate their transparency, at the same time, they're having other water agencies do their bidding for them, trying to get them to be protected from being sued themselves, while themselves using the threat of litigation to tamp down those of us that insist that they do their job. To the point where now they're the one news outlet that I've engaged with on that subject, turns out they've received a $5,000 payment from Mission Springs Water District to affect the reporting on these kinds of issues. Not over a long period of time, but immediate recent past. So we have this.
Could you bring this to a close, please?
We have an issue where we're not. We need to all remember that you're in a blood war, and you're probably going to lose when you're fighting people that don't play fair. So good luck with that going forward.
Director Bloomer?
No comments or requests, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Secretary Treasurer McKenna?
Buried in the footnotes of Mr. Reeves' report is a quote about resilience. It says, resilience in today's context is definitely not about bouncing back to a normal state. It's about accepting and preparing for new realities. And one of those new realities, I happened across a piece of climatological data. If you were in Roswell, New Mexico on October 20th this year, between midnight and 5 a.m., you would have experienced 5.78 inches of rain, which is 1/3 of their annual average. And it was 5 hours. So let's all be ready for what's unfolding out there. That's it for me.
Okay. Vice President Bowman?
Yes, I'm trying to figure out what I'd like to say, aiming at or talking about what Director Gracia is referring to. I think it's time for you to put up the data. You talked about a $5,000 payment. I have no idea what you're talking about. And you need to bring it forth because either you're saying truthful things or you're not.
I've read the data into the record.
It's not your turn at the moment, thank you.
I'm talking, Dr. Gasha. And your comments are going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So just, I'm asking.
5 votes, Bauman, and you're out.
Sir, you've had your opportunity to speak.
And my last name is pronounced Bowman. Okay? That is it.
All right, thank you. And I'm not going to continue on that theme. I'm going to ask that we close the public portion of this meeting. It's now 10 minutes of 10, and at 10 o'clock, if we could meet for the closed session portion in the boardroom.
Recording.
The open session, I can say that we do not have any reportable actions that were taken while we were in closed session. And with that, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.